Due to technical glitches at our broadcasting partner's location and the necessary repairs, this show has been held in queue for almost 3 weeks. However, the material, the news, and everything within are still relevant today. We're finally glad that we're able to broadcast it, and we hope that you'll enjoy it. You're listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector, a production of Blue Ram Media Group, LLC, and Private Officer International. The Private Officer Beat radio show is about to begin. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Private Officer Beat radio, a production of Blue Ram Media Group, LLC, and Private Officer International. So glad that you could join us today, whether listening live as we broadcast this from the Blue Ram Studios, or maybe you've downloaded or you're streaming it on the many platforms across the spectrum. And whatever you're doing, we definitely appreciate it, and we hope that you are spreading the word and letting others know about the radio show that encompasses both contract security and police, as well as loss prevention and ORC investigators and the whole gamut of those working in public safety. I have a lot of breaking news to bring you today, as well as some exciting things coming out of our office, as I've been talking about over the last few weeks, about how we are unifying all of our services and combining our businesses. And of course, I'm always looking at new startups, things to bring forth that kind of blend in or enhance the businesses already up and running. And I'll tell you about a new one of those coming up today as well. We'll be spending a great majority of our time today talking about school security, the pluses, the minuses, the positives, and the negatives, as we have talked about over the last probably 6 or 7 years, after many schools depleted, deleted, squashed out their SROs and even physical security, and how in the last 2 years a lot of that has been brought back. But there's a lot of controversy behind that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And let me see what else. We've got, of course, breaking news. You can always read our news at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot.com, or check us out on Facebook /Private Officer International, or on Twitter at Private Officer. Unfortunately, once again, during the past 7 days, we've had several security officers murdered, and we've had several security officers murder others, including a contract security guard who killed his partner, another security guard. When I come back from my first break, we'll get into that a little bit. I'll also tell you about my latest interview with a New York media company talking about security and the changes and the downfalls to contract security. Although he wasn't negative, he was a realist, and we had a pleasant conversation. I'll tell you more about that coming up as well after the break. I want to remind you here at the beginning of the show again about the Private Officer Memorial Ride. We talked about that in the program the last week or so, and I want to remind you that you can get involved. Number one, you can just donate, flat out donate, to help sponsor us on the ride. You can rent a rental vehicle that we're going to use to go on several of these memorial rides, and if you do that, we'll put a magnetic sign on the vehicle. This vehicle is sponsored by or donated by XYZ Company. We'll also give you free advertising on all of our websites and social medias. And when we send out a press release, which we will, we'll also include you in on that as well. You can also sponsor us by sponsoring a local memorial service, either along one of the legs of the trips, either when we head up 95 or across I-10, or if you would like to bring us to your location, we'll also do a day of training for you, or if you can only spare 4 hours for your people, we'll do that as well. Contact Help Desk at privateofficer.com. Today, like I said, I've got a lot of things I want to talk about. I usually do. I'm not always able to get through the whole menu of items, but we'll do our best. Of course, we have breaking news and much more to bring you on today's episode. This is the Private Officer Radio, and we are the voice of the Frontline Protector, and we'll be right back.
Rebound comes out to Hooley for the win.
Hi, I'm Peter Hooley. My mum has always been my biggest fan. She cheered from the bleachers, from the living room, from her hospital bed, until one day she stopped cheering. My mum died of colon cancer at the age of 52. If she had been screened earlier, it could have saved her life.
If you're over 50, get screened today so you can be cheering tomorrow.
Without these people, I'd be dead.
This man helped my son through leukemia.
Do something amazing. Give blood.
This is really a horrific situation, and I wish that I could say this has never happened before, and this is just out of the blue, and, probably will never happen again. But coming out of Memphis, Tennessee, police have arrested Richard Lewis, a security guard, age 44, and charged him with first-degree murder. He killed a coworker, another security officer, shot him in the head. Now, Lewis said he had to. He said the other security guard was coming at him. Video footage from the scene shows that the security officer that was killed was frisking a man, and that something triggered the other security guard, and confrontation ensued. The security guard pulled his weapon and killed the other man. Police say there was no threat to the security guard. Now, a caveat, another situation that we've learned is that the security guard who committed the murder was unlicensed and wasn't even supposed to have a firearm. He had no security credential. It had expired quite some time ago, and he had no legal permit to carry the gun, or, in essence, he had no right to be on the job whatsoever. Now, the security company is under investigation by the Tennessee Regulatory Board, but you know what? What are they going to do? He's charged with murder. It's a little late to close the barn door after the horse has gotten out, as they say. It's a tragic situation. A man lost his life trying to do his job at the hands of another co-worker. And as I teach across the country, we're teaching a lot about workplace violence in the last, probably 15 years, but more so in the last 7 or 8. Workplace violence is on the rise. Workplace violence is covered by OSHA, which is a federal agency under the Department of Labor, but unfortunately they don't have any specific training or even rules about workplace violence, although they are, or they say that they are, compiling some new training, and I hope to get that soon. But the bottom line is security guards have killed other security guards before. It's not new at all. And I could go through several of them in the last 5 years. Armed security guards working together, coming from different backgrounds. Unfortunately, things heat up sometimes at work, and instead of stepping away, well, they actually engage one another with firearms. And unfortunately, like I say, in the 20 years that POI, 21 and a half, 22 years actually, since we've been in business, we have seen numerous security guards kill other security guards. We've even seen security guards off duty go and track down another coworker and kill them because of something that happened at the workplace. It's an unfortunate situation. One security officer is dead. One security officer is charged with murder. This occurred at a place called the Main Event on Applying Farms Parkway. And this is kind of like, I believe, an upscale nightclub. I'll really have to look into that a little bit further, but I believe it's some type of nightclub or something of that nature, and they were screening the people coming in for firearms and drugs and so forth. And the security officer charged with murder wasn't happy with this other guy doing the job, and that's how the confrontation kicked off, according to our understanding of it. Also, unfortunately, another security officer was gunned down, and a number of security officers had to use their firearms to defend themselves. We'll get to some of that coming up in the news, and maybe after this next break. I want to look up a couple of things. Hopefully I'll be able to grab those real quick and share those with you as well. But tragically, the use of force by security officers continues to increase as more security officers are armed. When I come back, I'll tell you about the conversation that I had a couple of days ago with the latest reporter, and I'll also tell you more about security officers and tragically being injured, killed on the job, and using force. You are listening to the voice of the Frontline Protector. This is Private Officer International, the Private Officer Beat Radio, and we'll be right back.
Are you looking for the finest private security officer training in the Charlotte metropolitan area? Do you need PPS qualifications in armed or unarmed training? Or maybe you're over there across the line in South Carolina and you need the SLED training. Well, we've got the right training at the right time for you. Premier Training Academy, located at 5624 Executive Center Drive, Suite 142 in metropolitan Charlotte, North Carolina. Give them a call today, 704-806-4933. They also offer firearms training, personal protection, first aid and CPR, and so much more. Call John at 704-806-4933.
Each day, those that protect and service in law enforcement put their lives on the line. These law enforcement officers often work long and irregular hours in tough and dangerous conditions, run a high risk of being attacked, wounded, or even killed by the very criminals that prey on us. Every year, hundreds of law enforcement officers are killed or seriously injured in the line of duty. Blue Alert is a system that provides the means to speed the apprehension of violent criminals who kill or seriously injure local, state, or federal law enforcement officers. Find out how you can truly help those who help. That's bluealert.us.
Security officers in Florida and California this past week used deadly force, and in my review, they were both justified. And as we're seeing more and more lethal force situations happening, the training has not increased, and certainly many of these security officers are really left to kind of decide for themselves as to what to do. In Whittier, California, a 28-year-old man was involved in a fight. This happened at a Santa Fe Springs swap meet. A lot of people outdoors. It happened in the 13,000 block of Micah Street. According to Whittier police, they're still not 100% sure of the chain of events, but they know that there was some type of large fight involving a number of people, and a man produced a weapon and began firing it into the crowd of people. Armed security officers on duty then returned fire and killed him. That man has not, I don't know what happened. It's not been identified as to why he was involved, but he's been identified as Christopher Ortiz, and investigators determined that he was armed with a firearm. He did begin shooting into a group of people who was trying to leave the area, and it was armed security officers who were on duty. One man also was detained and arrested and charged with assault, police said. Investigators do believe, and this is the key that we're seeing more times than not, that the man involved was a gang member. And, nationwide, we have a lot more gangs, and part of that reason is the illegals are bringing, they're gangs, and they're bringing their stuff to the states, and they're just starting new chapters of gangs, and unfortunately, security and police are the ones that have to deal with this. Training is key, but also being equipped with the proper equipment is the other key. In talking with a reporter a few days ago from New York City, he was discussing about the use of private security, and major news outlets have brought up the fact that many times security officers just stand there and watch gangs shoplift and steal and rob store owners and businesses, and why? What's the problem with this whole picture? Why aren't they getting involved? So on and so forth. Like I said earlier, he wasn't negative. It was more, he was understanding and respectful of the situation, but he was asking if there's anything that can be done. And in the discussion, we talked about the fact, different states allow security officers to do different things. In some states they can detain, but unfortunately many times both the security company and even the client themselves do not want security to detain or attempt to detain. And we've seen over the last 3 or 4 years that in situations where security has attempted to detain groups of people shoplifting, more times than not they get injured. And there are other cases where armed security officers have used unreasonable force to stop these thefts. Now, in the event that these thieves use force, they assault somebody, well, that automatically turns that into a felony in almost every state and makes that a robbery. And in that situation, using force would be allowed 100%. We're facing a time like no other, and one of my sermons that I preach almost, every other week on the radio show and in my classes is the fact that we have more and more security officers filling the role of quasi-law enforcement. We have more and more security officers that are being put into positions that are to enforce the rules and the laws, and more security officers are putting out there kind of as an island unto themselves with no backup, no assistance, no training, and they're left to make a decision, right or wrong, and unfortunately oftentimes it's wrong, and they get prosecuted for that, even to the degree of murder. Today we are talking about school security and how school is going to be kicking off in many states within the next couple of weeks. And many schools have begun hiring unarmed security officers, both contract security as well as proprietary within the school system. A shooting a while back in St. Louis has kicked off a debate nationwide again about the use of unarmed security and is it really worth it? And what can they do when there's an active shooter, when there's a gunman, when there's somebody who's armed in school? Of course, the backstory is the use of SROs in security, especially armed security, is looked at negatively in many school systems because they say it's a racial thing, and we'll get into that at the bottom of the hour as well. And you are listening to the Private Officer Beat Radio, and we are coming right back.
Explosion, and I remember just opening my eyes and it got both of my legs. I had surgery after surgery, and what's going to happen next? The Wounded Warrior Project said, look brother, everything's going to be okay. 3 months from now, 4 months from now, a year from now, you'll be fine. I don't know if I would be as well adjusted as I am now if it wasn't for them.
To learn more, call 1-877-832-6997 or visit woundedwarriorproject.org.
With school back in session, help us keep our kids safe. When school crossing signs are posted, do not drive faster than 15 miles per hour and clear through the crosswalk. Do not pass other vehicles, even if they're driving slower than the speed limit. Passing means any part of your vehicle overtaking any part of their vehicle. You don't have to completely pass the other driver for it to be a violation. When you see anyone in the crosswalk, you must come to a full stop until they're completely out of the crosswalk. Remember, we don't want to write you a ticket. We just want to keep our school crossings accident-free.
If you were to ask any of my close friends about me and ask, what's he like? They're going to say he's innovative, creative, energetic, a visionary, somebody who's on the go, and this past week has proven that to be true once more. After working more than a year on a new project, we have finalized it and now have it underway. I spent a good amount of time over the last 30 plus years on the Gulf Coast of Alabama, between Florida and Alabama, and have lived there at least on a part-time basis and sometimes a full-time basis during much of that time, and I often travel between that location and the Carolinas and Virginia. It came to my attention about 2 years ago that on the Gulf Coast, between the Gulf Coast of Florida and the Gulf Coast of Louisiana, there are very few organizations, foundations, non-profits that work to help first responders. There are some who are exclusively available to help and assist law enforcement, but not to include or encompass all of the different areas of public safety, which include the fire service, EMS, law enforcement, the sheriff's office, corrections. These are all public safety, including dispatchers, who are often also overlooked. But we have created such an organization called the Gulf Coast Heroes Foundation as part of a bigger piece of what we're doing along the Gulf Coast. Many of you do listen to our Gulf Coast radio show religiously, and I definitely appreciate that. But we're doing a lot of different things along the Gulf Coast, as I talked about in my previous show, moving a lot of our key staff and combining, unifying all of our services under one roof. So, very excited to get this underway. We'll be providing financial assistance to public safety personnel injured, assisting families of those who are killed in the line of duty, working with other providers in mental health and even spiritual counseling. Someone's offered to assist us with dogs that they use to help comfort and be with people who have been involved in traumatic situations. So we're just getting this underway. Our new website will be launched soon. A regional press release and interview with the media will be conducted soon. And so that's very exciting for us. As I mentioned a few radio shows ago, there are many organizations that are similar to this, but none for private security. We've tried to do this on a national basis for the security professionals, but for one reason or the other, it just never came together. Although places, organizations such as ASIS and the National Foundation of Security for Healthcare and so on and so forth, they just never really got too involved. And so I'm still interested in launching this type of foundation to assist security nationwide, but it's going to take a lot of people to come forward and a lot of finances to make this happen. So in the reality of the whole thing, we can control a smaller area much easier, and therefore that's why we established the Gulf Coast Heroes Foundation for law enforcement, the Sheriff's Office, EMS, Fire Service, dispatchers, and corrections. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is really just getting underway, and I'm very excited about that. There's a lot of sadness having an organization that is specific to the security industry. It has been a whirlwind over 20 years, a lot of ups and mostly downs in the security industry because people don't get involved. Even after announcing the memorial ride for the 2024 year, just a few people came forward, not a whole lot of interest once again, and we need the support of everybody to make this happen, and we need everyone's support to help us to assist those injured or killed in the line of duty, the families of those killed in the line of duty. I don't know what to say at this point. We're just going to keep on plugging along. We'll keep on doing the best that we can. I don't know. I'm kind of at my wit's end in some areas with Private Officer International and the security industry just because of the lack of interest. We've been around for 20 years plus, 22 years almost, so it's not really that people don't recognize or know about us or understand what we do, because they do know. It's just that people don't get involved in this profession. If you would like to contact us, helpdesk@privateofficer.com. We really like to work with any business, organization, or individual who's interested in getting something going to aid and assist our frontline security personnel. I'll take a quick break. I've got a lot to say, of course. I'll be right back.
The Federal Aviation Administration wants you to fly your drone responsibly. Avoid flying your drone near other aircraft, especially near airports. Fly your drone below 400 feet. Always keep your drone in sight. If you see a safety issue involving drones, contact local law enforcement immediately. Fly smart. Fly safe. Have fun.
You're listening to the Private Officer Beat Radio Show, broadcasting live from the Blue Ram Media Studios. As you know, many states have, for the last 5 or so years, been very, very tight on their requirements for pursuits and certain type of arrest. A lot of states have backed away from stopping vehicles for minor infractions. Pursuits are only if someone's life's at risk or if it was a very violent crime. Well, guess what? Things are loosening back up to the way that it used to be. I mentioned in the radio show probably maybe a dozen or more times, Florida is one of the key states where those policies never really took effect. They've always chased violators. They've also are very, I would say, pro law enforcement state where, you know, if you break the law, you can be expected to be arrested. And there's some sheriffs who have come out on social media over a number of years, at least the last 3 to 5, and they've said if you come to our county and you commit a crime, you can be, you know, just expect to be locked up because we don't play. Well, California is probably on the far spectrum of that concept or that idea or that methodology of how they enforce the law. However, something has happened to turn the state around. This past week, Governor Newsom, he'd already said that he was going to enforce illegal encampments by the homeless. He said that he was just waiting for a decision by the Supreme Court, and of course that came down about a week or so ago, and he has since ordered throughout the state that illegal homeless encampments be taken down. He said the state of California spends a lot of money on homeless resources, and if they really want to be helped, they know where to go because there are resources throughout the state in, you know, all communities. Well, just 2 days ago, the same governor in the same state that was anti-policing, or at least so it seemed, just told the state that he believes that more pursuits should be conducted. Rather than back off from pursuing those who are, you know, wanted or have violated even minor traffic infractions, he started off by telling the city of Oakland they needed to pursue more people. He said criminals are getting away. Minnesota has also loosened up the restraints that they've had on police. Out in Seattle and Oregon, the same thing is happening. They have allowed police much more freedom in going after lawbreakers, and you're going to continue seeing this because they're getting high pressure from the citizens. Even those that you think are anti-police are now not only speaking up but protesting that they want police in their community, that they want the criminals locked up. Retail associations are another aspect to this, what's happening. More and more retailers, which by the way, they make a lot of money for communities no matter where you're located. The retail stores drive the economy and the tax base for that area, and they have stepped up repeatedly, but their voice is getting louder and louder as they continue to say, if you don't protect us, if you don't lock up the shoplifters, if you don't stop these gang robberies of our stores, we're going to close down the store. We're going to move out to the areas where they do still police, where they still do protect the business and the citizens. Across the country, we're seeing this more every single day. Well, what does that have to do with private security? Everything has to do with private security. The fact that police now can do more, not in all communities, but in many, this assists the security officer so that when they do call about a trespasser, when they do call about a shoplifter, when they do call about being assaulted. When they do call, when they have a problem on their property, they can, at least in many more communities today than just last year or just last month, they can now depend on the police responding and taking some action and hopefully resolving the issue. Not all communities, we're never going to say all and under any circumstance, but in many communities across the country, as I've said a number of times in recent months, the pendulum swings, and sometimes it swings in, the wrong way, the bad way, and other times it swings back to the good way. And this pendulum, I believe, and I've been saying for the last year or more, that is now swinging back into the favor of law. As we have talked about here on Private Officer Radio, we've had to decrease some of our services, not too much, but a little bit, and news is definitely taking a hit. However, we're still getting the news out, especially officer down reports and some of the more violent incidents involving private security. Remember, you can read our news blog 24 hours a day at privateofficerbreakingnews.blogspot.com. You can also visit our social media at Facebook.com/Private Officer International, as well as Twitter/Private Officer. In Long Island, New York, 3 suspects are in custody. They've been accused of assaulting a security officer working at a bowling alley in Baldwin, in Long Island, in New York, and now all 3 face multiple charges. Police say Davian Campbell, Danny Daniels, and Ariel Serrera Gangadine refused to leave the ultra lanes at about 1:30 a.m. Police say the security officer tried to escort them off the premises when they began kicking, choking, and even throwing bowling balls at him, injuring him. They fled after stealing his cell phone. Police were able to locate and arrest the 3 suspects. During the arrest, police found a firearm in that vehicle, and it's really a good thing that, they did not use it on that security officer. Now they're facing both misdemeanors and felony charges, according to the police department. In Essex County, New Jersey, not too far from this other incident, police there say a security guard has been charged with aggravated manslaughter. Although the security officer was off duty, he had been involved in a confrontation with the person. He ran into this person and evidently killed him. Police have charged him with aggravated circumstances in this, and that charge could be upgraded to murder, and he's currently being held without bond at this point. In Las Vegas, another security guard has been charged, this time with murder. The security guard said that he got into a confrontation with a homeless man. Karsten Merrick was booked into the Clark County Detention Center. He's an unarmed security officer. He works for Designated Defense, a private security company. The Metropolitan Police Department received a call about a man down. When they went to investigate it, they found a man under a blanket. They determined that the security guard was responsible, and now he is being held without bond. In Hartford, Connecticut, my old stomping grounds, in an area where I know quite intimately, the small city has now decided to go back to walking beats. That's right. To get out of the vehicle and to put officers in 3 areas that have seen continual escalation of crime. 15 officers will now be assigned to what they're calling Community Patrol Division, putting the cops back on the beats. They're not the only police department, by the way. No, sir. A number of police agencies in the last few years have begun doing the same thing. The walking beats in Hartford will be a 2-man post. They'll be on Albany Avenue, I know that area well, Park Street, and several other areas to be determined based on the level of crime happening. On a very sad note, a police officer, a man that I've done a story on several times, both here on the radio as well as in our magazine, and I've talked about him quite often in my police academy training in Camden, Arkansas, L.C., otherwise known as Buckshot Smith. The oldest living active police officer in the country died at the age of 95. You see, Buckshot served in the position of a police officer until he was 93. His law enforcement career spanned nearly 65 years. And yes, even though he was 93, he was out in a patrol car in uniform and he was making his rounds. The Camden Police Department stated that on July the 25th, Smith died at the age of 95. At the age of 93, while he was still serving with the police department, he had a couple of minor injuries and setbacks medically, and he said he knew it was time to take a rest. Well, God bless Buckshot, and I wish there was a whole lot more people out there like him that understood service, understood policing, and really gave it their all. In Albuquerque, New Mexico, a person is under arrest after he shot a mall security officer. Gilbert Gallego, an Albuquerque police spokesperson, said the shooter was captured by police during a foot chase soon after the shooting. Police say it all occurred inside the mall and an incident near the Foot Locker. Although police didn't go into many details, they have the suspect in custody and the security officer is on the mend. A man attacked a Target security officer in Santa Ana, California this past week, injuring him after assaulting him with a skateboard. Now, this assault is not new to security. In fact, we have documented cases time and time again where security officers have been seriously and even critically injured. One security officer about 5 years ago had to have a big piece of his scalp and brain removed because of severe injuries. Police are still looking for the suspect and they hope to bring him to justice soon. Another security officer, unfortunately this time in Atlanta, Georgia, is also being investigated for a fatal shooting. It happened at a gas station in the Buckhead area of Atlanta. Police were called to the Chevron at 3 a.m. in the 600 block of Morosco Drive. Police say that a confrontation ensued and the security officer shot and killed a man and then fled the area. At the last time we checked over the weekend, he was still a wanted man. The owner of a Texas security company is under arrest. He's charged with sexual assault of a child. Kirk Grable, 54, the owner of Lone Star Protection and Security, was arrested July the 16th and booked into the Parker County Jail on sexual assault of a child and prohibited sexual conduct, and police say they're investigating him for possible other victims and more charges to come possibly his way. Coming out of Aurora, Colorado, which is right next door, it's kind of a metro area of Denver. 22 years ago, Kelly Latillo was hired as a physical ed teacher at the Regis Joshua High School. And guess what? She worked her way through the system. She really saw school security and safety as a need, a priority, something that she thought she could make a difference in. And now, 15 years later, she is the security director. She says she loves to keep people safe. All of the staff, nurses, and students all praise her, and we do too. A feel-good story, really more than that, and one that we've talked about recently. A man in Philadelphia, a retired police officer who is now a security officer, well, he's turned to sculpting to honor law enforcement. And he has many different pieces that he's made over the years to present to both officers who have been injured and officers who have retired. The one-time police officer, Tom Greco, says it's a joy for him, and every time that he sits down to his desk, it's a therapy. And we have reported on him previously, and I think I'm going to reach out to him and give him a thanks and an award. In Whittier, California, security officers fatally shot a man who was involved in a fight. He eventually fired upon a crowd at an outdoor flea market. The man died. The security officers so far have not been charged with any crime. I've looked at it. It looks like a good shooting to me. Remember, when you see news happening, contact us, helpdesk at privateofficer.com.
If the water is flowing at the low water crossing, turn around, don't risk your life, don't do it, you might not make it through it, turn around, might take a little time to heed the warning signs, to turn around, and don't drown. There was the explosion, and I remember just opening my eyes, and I got both of my legs. I had surgery after surgery, and what's going to happen next? The Wounded Warrior Project said, look, brother, everything's going to be okay. 3 months from now, 4 months from now, a year from now, you'll be fine. I don't know if I would be as well adjusted as I am now if it wasn't for them.
To learn more, call 1-877-832-6997 or visit woundedwarriorproject.org.
We have talked about school security many times on this program. We have talked about incidents and situations that have occurred. And we have talked about the unfortunate school shootings that have occurred from one end of our country to the other and back again multiple times. In an audio clip that I'm about to play for you, a discussion about school security, an incident that took place in St. Louis, Missouri, and how unarmed school security officers working for the school faced a gunman, and how they admit during an interview with police that they ran for their lives, tried to escape, did everything they could to get away from the gunman. And you would too, and so would I. Unarmed, you're definitely only going to be a victim. You cannot even think about the possibilities of defending others when you can not even defend yourself. And we talk about this frequently. On a recent show, I talked about being defenseless. How can you protect others when you cannot protect yourself? Now, I will be the first to admit that having school security officers who are unarmed poses a problem for the school security officer and for the students and staff and the visitors and anyone else who enters the school property. On the other hand, I also have to all of the reasons why businesses, including schools, do not hire armed police or armed security officers. Let's take a listen to this audio clip. And I'll be back in a moment to discuss the uses of school security, how school security was depleted, dismissed, taken away from schools about 5 or 6 years ago during the George Floyd protest, and some schools still remain without security. And then I'll talk about how I have seen in the last 18 months to 24 months schools bringing back SROs and security officers, armed and unarmed. Let's take a listen to this audio, and I'll be right back.
Protecting kids from another school shooting could mean learning from a St. Louis tragedy. I'm Corey Stark.
And I'm Lauren Traeger in for Samantha Jones tonight. Our First Alert 4 investigation uncovered dozens of records from the deadly shooting at CVPA High School.
And tonight, First Alert 4 investigator Susan L. Corey explains where security stands before your child heads back to school just weeks from now.
For the first time, we're getting an in-depth look at how school security responded to the deadly attack. It's one of the answers we've been pressing for almost 2 years. After we uncovered this, police said they are getting ready to release some records, including surveillance and body camera video. The families who lost their loved ones tell me they believe this is information critical to safety that we need to be talking about. School security guards in their own words.
I heard 3 to 5 loud bangs. I look up, I see someone in all black.
As they told St. Louis police what they did when a former student shot his way into CVPA High School.
We ran for our lives.
First Alert 4 investigates uncovered dozens of records kept hidden from the public. As 2 years later, St. Louis police claim it's still an open investigation. Together, these records tell part of the story of what happened at CVPA when teacher Jean Kuchka and 15-year-old student Alexandria Bell died.
I got to the bottom of the steps. He was standing there with a rifle like this.
Audio and video of police interviews reveal 3 school security guards said they faced the shooter all unarmed.
I'm just like, I just said, and I ran back up the steps.
He raised the AR up at me and he said, and the gun jammed. I took off and I ran in the girls' bathroom.
Their accounts not easy for Joe Kuchka to hear.
She didn't sign up to be a teacher to be killed.
His mom died in her 3rd-floor classroom as she stood between the shooter and her students.
You've got people there that are supposed to protect the students and employees, and to me, they didn't do that.
He believes this information shouldn't have been kept secret.
If they're not going to confront them, then why don't you have someone there, like a police officer, that will confront someone that's there to kill?
St. Louis Public Schools hires its own security guards. The majority are unarmed. They're different from a school resource officer, sworn law enforcement, contracted to work in a school.
It's very difficult, incredibly difficult, to win a battle against an armed individual when you're unarmed.
Mo Kennedy worked in schools as an officer and now runs the National Association of School Resource Officers.
They have a much better chance of stopping this and saving lives than an individual who is unarmed and maybe not trained to deal with that circumstance.
Police records we found show 19-year-old Orlando Harris was in the school for almost 20 minutes before he was killed by police.
911.
For the first time, we're hearing the 911 call made by a school security dispatcher. She wasn't at the school and radioed guards who were. Moments when time mattered.
Is the suspect still in the gym? Is they still moving around? Has anyone been hit? My traffic is quiet.
Repeat your transmission.
Has any of that information been shared with you?
No.
St. Louis Board of Education Vice President Matt Davis claims police gave him the same answer, that almost 2 years later, the shooting is still under investigation.
If there's information in those reports that the school district can learn from, and also waiting and then releasing information at such a late date is just traumatic for everyone who was involved and doesn't really serve a purpose.
He says the district made changes after the shooting. They approved $1 million in emergency spending to upgrade security, including changing doors and locks. They also nearly doubled security guard salaries and added more training. Has there ever been talk of bringing in school resource officers as opposed to security guards?
It comes up, and honestly, we get that discussion from both sides.
Joe Kuchka believes this is why there needs to be more answers and less secrecy.
If you don't learn from this incident, then what's going to stop it from happening again?
Other cities like Nashville and Kansas City use school resource officers. St. Louis County Police are working in 12 different districts. As for the police body camera and surveillance video from inside of the school, SLMPD haven't given an exact date for when they will release that, but they do tell us it could be as early as next week. Susan Elcory, First Alert 4 investigates.
Nationwide, some schools went with a SRO/SSO program. They had local law enforcement who carry firearms, obviously, and then they had unarmed security officers who did things like access control, manning the metal detector, building physical security, making sure doors were locked that were supposed to be locked, making sure that there was no one hanging in the halls or outside where they weren't supposed to be. And the police took care of the physical security and any type of threat, fight, or other incident on the property. That sounds like a pretty decent method to provide school security, and for the most part, it probably does work. But there's still concerns. If it's the unarmed security officer in the lobby or the unarmed security officer making foot patrols outside and he confronts someone who looks suspicious or looks to be a trespasser or even a fight situation between students who might be armed, what good will the SRO who's hanging around in the school office or who's in the lunchroom or who's in the bathroom, what good will it do the unarmed security officer? Sure, he probably has a two-way radio. Sure, he might be able to call for help. But there is almost no probability that the police officer will get there before that school security officer who's unarmed is injured or even killed. So while it makes some sense on one side of the coin to have both armed police and unarmed security, unless they're glued at the hip, unless they're walking hand in hand, unless they're shoulder to shoulder at all times, when the police officer goes to the cafeteria, the security officer goes with them. When the police officer goes to the administrative principal's office, the school security officer follows behind him, goes with him. You know, that doesn't make sense. But that would be the only way that he would be somewhat and not even 100%, but somewhat safe. There's no guarantee, even with armed police or armed security officers, that people are going to be safe. Having a firearm helps, but having a firearm does not guarantee at all 100% that you will be safe and be able to use it to defend yourself. Some people are just quicker. Some people are sneakier. Some people ambush others. Every police officer killed on the job is armed, but they're shot and killed all the time. And the same with armed security. This conversation is diverse. This conversation is multiple layered. It's like peeling back the onion. And there's no easy resolution. There's no easy solution. There's no real answer except one. And that is every police and security officer on the school property, on duty, must be armed, must be trained beyond a few hours in the classroom and a couple of rounds fired on the range. They have to have significant training. And unfortunately, many schools that hire contract security companies just don't put forth that message or that requirement in their contracts. The median amount of security officer training nationwide right now is about 27 hours. And that's the median. Some states it's 42 hours. There's a couple of states around 60 now. There's a bigger likelihood that the contract security officer has less than 24 hours of training. And so it's very, very difficult to have all of the skills necessary, to have all of the experience, to have all of the wherewithal of what to do in every situation if you haven't done the training, if you haven't done the time, if you haven't been in the environment. You may not know how to handle situations, armed or unarmed. We're facing a time right now when violence in schools and elsewhere has substantially increased. And unfortunately, so has the number of weapons that continue to get into our school. And one of the areas that schools continue to push back on, although some in the last few years have gone to not only metal detectors, but also gun detection. And some schools have a company that monitors with gun detection software the schools, and they can identify threats and weapons, they say, before they make it past the front entrance. When I come back from this break, we'll talk about what can be done to provide true and adequate school security.
It's a very simple thing. It only takes 2 seconds. We all know we should do it. We all say we do it. But do we? About 35,000 people were killed in motor vehicle accidents last year. More than half were not wearing a seatbelt. A brother, a father, a mother, a best friend. Is it worth it? I lost a sister. Don't let it happen to you and your family. Tell the people you love to buckle up.
Distracted driving is dangerous,
But some people just can't seem to help themselves. There's the steering wheel propper, the sneak-a-peeker, the fast roller, the nightlighter. And it's not long until they become the fender-bender-er, the got-a-ticketer, the veering off the road, the driver who kills someone. Enough with the phones already. Just put them down.
Talking about school security is frustrating. That's the bottom line. It's frustrating for the administrators. It's frustrating for the students who don't believe that armed security or even security of any type is necessary at all. And it's because of students that many schools withdrew law enforcement from the campuses. It's also frustrating for the parents who understand what the students are saying until there's an active shooter, until there's a situation on the campus where someone's hurt. And then they're all about bringing back police, but limiting what they can and cannot do. Discussing campus security, whether it be your local elementary school, high school, or a college or university, has many different components to it. Everyone, of course, wants a school to be safe. And every parent wants their student, their child, to be safe at school. And as we grow up, we want to be safe at work. And we think that the employer should provide that safety and security for us. And parents believe that schools should provide safety and security for their child. But nobody can come to one cohesive method of doing that. No one can agree on the steps to take to provide school security. Some want no police and no security officers in the school whatsoever. How can you be safe? How can you be secure without having someone in a position that has overwatch of the school and those inside? How can you be safe and secure when there's no one watching out for you? No one preventing bad people from getting into the school. No one from responding to suspicious persons, activities, vehicles, situations, incidents. No one protecting the student, the teacher, the visitor. How can you have any peace of mind when there's no one on the property? Many people of color have brought to the attention of the media, of the world, during George Floyd protests, that police are biased, and security as well. That they only choose to arrest or enforce laws against brown and blacks. And maybe to some degree it's correct. I don't know. I'm not there. But here's a couple of things I do know. When police are at a minority school, especially in the inner city, when the police are patrolling a minority community, a low-income housing complex, and I know for sure because I've done it both in law enforcement and within my security businesses, you have to expect that it will be minorities that will be charged, that it will be minorities that will be part of the enforcement because that's who's there. When police are patrolling a majority, non-minority subdivision, community, then of course more white people will be arrested than Hispanics or blacks. That's common sense. No one is being targeted. However, when you are working at a specific area that has a larger majority of one race or the other, one nationality or the other, that's who's going to be, either ticketed or arrested because they're the ones committing the offenses in that particular area. And without trying to cause a riot, many studies have shown that in some communities, blacks and browns are more violent and are involved in more fights, more gang activities, and more shootings. And that is an FBI statistical fact. It has nothing to do with race. It just is what it is. In our school systems, the only way to protect our students, our children, 100% is to have an armed security staff, which should be either law enforcement or well-trained security officers, metal detectors, only one point of entry on the campus, and that's through the front door. And like I said a moment ago, some schools have already begun that process as a way to detect more firearms and weapons. It's an unfortunate situation, but it is the fact that our teenagers, even those as young as 10 and 11, are murdering other people, carjacking people, robbing people. I just read a few weeks ago, a 9-year-old attempted to rape an older woman. I'm sure that older woman smacked the heck out of him, but, he was arrested. What is happening with our kids? What's happening with our society? It's out of control. And we expect law enforcement and security to control it. And it's almost impossible. So in order to have a true secure campus, it doesn't matter if it's a college or a university or a high school, we have to have one point of entry. All the doors need to be locked, and no student should go out of any door except through the front. One way in, one way out. Metal detectors at the front door. Gun detection systems. Education. We need to educate our students as to the safety of themselves and the school campus and why we're doing what we're doing. We have to talk with the parents. And when there's a problem, when there's a misuse of force, when there's anything that involves security or the police officer and the student, we need to sit down and talk it over and figure out, was it correct or was there an error? Did we go too far? Sometimes now, we don't go far enough, to be honest. No easy one way to fix this problem. But we all need to come together and understand that the campus needs security. I've said this on the program a number of times. When I was in high school, we had police, but they only came inside the school itself when there was a fight or some other administrative or emergency situation. They were outside. They were there to stop trespassers. They were there to patrol the fence line. They were there to respond to emergencies. And that's where our policing should be, outside. Everyone's got two-way radio communication these days, so there's no reason to be hanging out inside. We need at least 2 officers on every campus. We can't put one person there and think he's going to cover the whole campus and be everywhere at the same time. It's like putting one police officer in the town or the city. It doesn't work out well. We need at least two officers so they can not only back each other up when there's a situation, but where they can patrol separately different areas and keep vigilance and visibility so people know from the outside, oh, they do have armed security, they have police. We need to have a lot of conversations and understand that this is best for the safety of our children, our school employees, our parents, and our visitors who come to the campus. And while today's program will not solve the issue, it does address some of the problems. We'll be talking about this, I'm sure, more in the upcoming weeks and months because schools are beginning to realize that security should be a priority and are calling them back to campus. That's going to conclude today's episode. Until the next time, y'all, be safe, be blessed, and we will see you back here on the radio.